Good morning. The September 18th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. In the interest of promoting the order and efficiency of these hearings, persons who are disruptive to the hearing will be asked to leave the hearing room. Meetings of the Board of Estimates are open to the public for the duration of the meeting. The hearing room must be vacated at the conclusion of the meeting. Failure to comply may result in a charge of trespassing. Madam Deputy Comptroller, are there any corrections, additions, or deferrals on the agenda?
Good morning. For today's agenda, we received a protest for pages 14 to 18 from Senator Antonio Hayes, Delegates Nick Mosby, Melissa Wells, Frank Conaway, and Councilman Leon Pinkett. That item, pages 14 to 18, will be moved to the non-routine agenda. In addition, we received two protests from Ms. Kim Trueheart, pages 41 to 44. That item will be moved to the non-routine agenda. The additional protest for Ms. Trueheart was for page 57. That pertains to a grant, and that item will not be heard as a protest by the board. I have a correction to be made, and that is for page 95, item number 22. It's in the informal section, and that item is for Atlantic Emergency Solutions. The first line is correct. Please delete the line that begins with solicitation number B5005875 and the text that follows, which is Camp Small Log and Debris Removal. Replace that deleted line with the following text. Houston Galveston Area Council Contract number AM 10-18, Ultra Medic 1, 168 inches by 96 inches, PT RAM, RAM, 4500, 4x2, with air ride, road rescue medic unit. The text for the submitting for the agency, it's for Department of General Services, is correct. There's no change to that. Also, for items that we have for today's agenda, certain ones will be moved to the non-routine agenda in addition to the protests I just noted. That is page 3 will be moved to the non-routine agenda, as well as pages 14 to 18 and pages 41 to 43. I have the following abstentions to report. The Honorable Mayor Young will abstain on page 4, on pages 71 to 72, and pages 118 to 119, item number 11. The Honorable President Scott will abstain on page 4, pages 14 to 16, and pages 17 to 18. As well as page 71 to 72 and 118 to 119, item number 11. The Honorable Comptroller Pratt will abstain on page 70, pages 77 to 78, item number 2, page 78, item number 3, pages 114 to 115, item number 6, page 115, item number 7. Mr. Rudolph Chow will abstain on pages 113 to 114, item number 4. And again, the items on the non-routine agenda are page 3, pages 14 to 16, as well as pages 17 to 18, a related item, and page 41 to 43. Mr. President, members of the board, those are the items that are on the non-routine agenda, as well as the correction and the abstentions that have been reported thus far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. I would direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from my office dated September the 16th, 2019, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections and additions that have been noted by the Deputy Comptroller. I will entertain a motion to approve all of the items contained on the routine agenda.
Mr. President, I move approval of the items on the routine agenda.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carried. The routine agenda items have been adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 3, Law Department Settle Agreement and Release. Will the parties please come forward?
Is Ms. Brenda McDowell present? Mr. President, I'll be happy to provide an explanation for her absence.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Madam Comptroller, the Law Department is exceedingly pleased that you have agreed with our recommended procedures going forward in connection with Law Department settlements with claimants involved with police litigation. We are all aware of the many efforts at many levels to enhance transparency and to make it possible for people who are involved in litigation arising out of their interaction with police officers in Baltimore City be allowed to speak, encouraged to speak, permitted to speak in a public way about their own truth. Recent events have made clear that the Law Department needed to do more to make sure that could happen. And Mr. Mayor, I am so pleased that you have worked with the Law Department to bring about what we believe in the Law Department is an innovative, foresighted approach to the challenge presented by these circumstances. So going forward, the Law Department has revised its procedures for the settlement of police-involved litigation. All such settlements will be recommended to the board for placement on the non-routine agenda. And as a part of the recommendation to the board, lawyers representing those claimants will be advised, and their clients will be advised, that when the matter is presented to the board, the claimant, the plaintiff, the citizen, the resident will be invited to appear before the board on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, and with the acquiescence of the President, and Mr. President, the Law Department appreciates your acquiescence in this procedure.
Mr. Solicitor, before you go any further, I don't want to interrupt you, but we're going to be here for a long time already today, and I got some questions in particular to this one that...
Okay. If I could just finish the explanation, Mr. President,
please,
I'll be
please,
happy to answer
quickly.
any questions. I want to explain why Ms. McDowell is not here today.
Please, quickly.
So I spoke to Ms. McDowell's attorney yesterday afternoon after the mayor endorsed, and you endorsed this approach, and I explained the new procedure to Ms. McDowell's attorney. He was very happy to hear of it. I explained to him that it was the 11th hour because the procedure is brand new. But Ms. McDowell, Brenda McDowell, as you all know, is the claimant in this case, a $75,000 settlement reached with the Law Department arising out of police litigation. I explained all of the circumstances, and Ms. McDowell's attorney explained that he didn't think she would have showed today because she wants to move on. And I explained to him that, of course, she was not required to appear. Her appearance and her decision to speak or not speak is not at all a part of the settlement. But he did tell me that he didn't expect her to come, but he would talk to her. So she's not here. One last thing, Mr. President, and thank you for your patience. I explained to Ms. McDowell's attorney that even if she did not appear today, if she wished to speak to the media, that if he would provide me with her contact information, namely her phone number, I would personally and privately provide that phone number to any member of the media who is present today, so that if any member of the media wishes to contact Ms. McDowell in private to speak to her, that I would be happy to do so. I wouldn't broadcast the phone number, but I would provide it to the media. He has elected, and she has elected, Mr. President, not to provide her phone number. And so going forward, I think that this procedure, again, I thank the President, I thank Mr. Mayor, and I thank the Comptroller. I think this will enhance transparency in Baltimore City in a way that's never been seen before. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank
Mr.
you,
President.
thank you, Mr. Solicitor. And just so that we remember that I had this item placed on non-routine agenda because I have questions. So I guess my question is, should I ask that from someone else or the law department or from you today?
You should ask it of me, Mr. President.
Thank you. There remains a great deal of confusion as to whether the city is requiring plaintiffs to sign non-disclosure or non-disparagement agreements. As I review the settlement agreement, I read the language that limits the parties' ability to speak about their case. So can you please explain what we're having parties commit to in this case?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer that and any other question. As Mr. President, you're aware, and I think everybody's aware, before I became city solicitor in the fall of 2017, the standard settlement agreement and release provisions used by the city prohibited persons who entered into settlement agreements from speaking about their case at all. That provision also was one-sided, which is to say it was a non-disparagement provision under which the citizen claimant was prohibited from speaking about the case, but the city was not prohibited from disparaging the claimant. So among the changes that I have made in the last 2 years, Mr. President, and I made this one immediately, first of all, I made the non-disparagement provision in the agreement. It is not a non-disclosure agreement. And I'm glad you used that term, Mr. President, because there's been a lot of information out there that's actually misinformation. The city has never employed non-disclosure agreements. So it's called a non-disparagement agreement, and the essence of the agreement is that they don't defame the city or its officials or employees, and the city doesn't defame them. That's the essence of it, Mr. President. So this particular agreement in Ms. McDowell's case was negotiated approximately a couple of weeks ago. And Ms. McDowell's attorney knew full well about the controversy surrounding these provisions. He had no problem with it, Mr. President. Ms. McDowell had no problem with it. And
Follow-up
I think
question.
This present
Thank you.
procedure shows
Thank
that the
you.
city law department
Mr. Solicitor,
is
thank you.
inviting people to
Thank
come
you,
and
Mr.
speak.
Solicitor.
I'm
Thank
answering
you.
your question, Mr. President.
I know we got to answer, but we have multiple questions for you.
And I have multiple answers.
Thank you.
This the time
Ms.
the
Kim.
citizens get to question him?
One second, Ms. Kim. 1 second. Could you just please take a seat for a second? I have a bunch of questions for him.
Okay,
Yes,
all
ma'am.
right. So you're gonna give us
Yeah.
a chance too?
1 second.
Thank you.
Can you outline the differences between the settlement that you're mentioning today, Mrs. Solicitor, versus the ones in, let's say, the case with Mrs. Overby that we know went through the legal challenges recently?
Absolutely. It's exactly what I just said a few minutes ago, Mr. President. Ms. Overbay, who signed her agreement back in 2015, agreed in that agreement not to speak about the facts and circumstances of her case. Under that agreement, Ms. Overbay had agreed with her attorney's understanding that the only thing she could say about her litigation was the fact that the case had been settled. That was the Overbay agreement. And that was an agreement, as I said, Mr. President, that was one-sided. There was no prohibition on what any city official could say about the case or about Ms. Overbay, but Ms. Overbay, in that agreement, agreed not to talk about the case. That is no longer, and has not been since the fall of 2017, the form of agreements that have been used by the law department. So as I said, now both sides agree not to disparage, not to defame, while at the same time, both sides are permitted to talk about the case, and in fact, claimants are now encouraged to talk about the case. Thus, this procedure that we've rolled out this morning, again, not to repeat myself, Mr. President, Ms. McDowell has chosen not to come.
Well, I think that most people can't get here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, but we have to understand that we still have to go a little further. So thank you for that, Mr. Solicitor. Just to follow up to that, so for you and I, we can understand the language that you were just using. But let's just say that I have a constituent who unfortunately was mistreated by BPD, and they went through one of these cases. in layman's term, explain to me what they can and can't say based off, or to the public, what they could and couldn't say based off these kind of agreements.
They can't lie about the city. Now, I say that, but of course, they can lie. Anybody can lie anytime they want. And people can be called a liar the way I've been called a liar by the ACLU. That comes with the territory. I get it, Mr. President. Actually, the Supreme Court has actually held that the right to lie is protected by the First Amendment. But that doesn't mean we can't include in our agreements provisions that discourage people from telling lies. So under this agreement, Mr. President, people can speak their truth. Emphasis on truth. They can speak their truth, their feelings, their opinions, based on the facts and circumstances of the case. That's what I've been saying for 2 years. That will remain the situation under the agreement that we are using, Mr. President. And again, we will invite every claimant to come to the Board of Estimates. And I agree with you, a lot of people can't take off from work on Wednesday morning, have other obligations with their families. Thus, if they want to provide the city solicitor with their phone number, the city solicitor will give their phone number to any member of the media present at the Board of Estimates meeting, and any member of the meeting will be free to contact the claimant and talk to the claimant about his or her or their case. That's the regime we're going forward with, Mr. President.
Thank you. And can you explain why the law department defaults to using NDPCs and why it's necessary to employ them in the same language in every instance? And also, what effects does the mayor's executive order have on the language of these settlements? And will the law department revisit the language it uses based off the mayor's executive order?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. The mayor's executive order summarizes, encapsulates, and sets forth with clarity what has been the policy of the Baltimore City Department of Law since Andre Davis became the city solicitor. And I appreciate the mayor's extra step appropriately to make clear in that executive order what the policy of Baltimore City and the Baltimore City Law Department is. Now, you asked me about the agreement, Mr. President. Yeah, you know, people don't like lawyers until they need one. And there's a lot of, you know, boilerplate, legalistic language in this 9-page agreement. Every lawsuit in America is concluded by settlement with a document like this, Mr. President. And I don't expect a layperson to be able to go through this document and understand severability. And by the way, Mr. President, every agreement that the city enters into, both sides, if there's a dispute over the agreement, waive their jury trial right. So just like you waive your right to the First Amendment in a limited way, you give up your Seventh Amendment right to a jury if there's a dispute. So none of this is unusual, Mr. President. This is the way lawsuits have been settled for hundreds of years. We made the change with regard to transparency to enhance the mayor's commitment, and I believe your commitment, Mr. President, and the city's commitment to transparency, excellence, and integrity in the manner we treat our residents and claimants. So, yeah, I don't suggest to you, Mr. President, with all respect, that a layperson, however brilliant he or she is, can pick up this document and be able to explain it the way a lawyer does. But everyone who signs this agreement has a lawyer. We would not enter into this agreement with a person who did not have a lawyer. It takes a lawyer to practice law. We don't expect non-lawyers to practice law. And in both Ms. Overbay's case and Ms. McDowell's case, the lawyers who representing them are explaining what this agreement means. In fact, Ms. Overbay's lawyer, his picture was on the paper yesterday because he's involved with young people. He's a retired police officer. Who knows better what the police department is all about and how to settle a lawsuit against the police department than a lawyer who used to be a police officer? And if you check it, Mr. President, if you go back and do the research, you will see that Ms. Overbay's lawyer made a statement to the Baltimore Sun a few days after the law department withheld a portion of her funds, and the lawyer is quoted as saying, yes, the city can do this. Now that suggests to me, Mr. President, that he explained to Ms. Overbay, and she knew full well what the limitations were. Okay? Now, Ms. Overbay could have brought a lawsuit as soon as she got that reduced check, but she didn't. She waited 3 years to bring a lawsuit. And she waited too long, Mr. President, because the law in Maryland is if you want to sue the city, you got to do it in 1 year. And she waited. So now that case is back before the district court, Mr. President. The Fourth Circuit has ruled, and the law department lawyers will go before the judge to whom the case is assigned and ask the judge to interpret what the Fourth Circuit has done. And whatever the federal district court orders Baltimore City to do in resolving that case, Baltimore City will do. That's how litigation works. And if, frankly, I'm going to say it, former Mayor Pugh announced in May of 2017 that I was going to be the city solicitor, but that I wouldn't be starting until September. If the ACLU had waited until I got here and not filed that lawsuit, we wouldn't be here today, Mr. President. But there are certain people out there who think the way you get what you want is to beat up somebody, to disparage the city, to bring people down. People don't want to come and talk sensibly with people with authority to resolve matters. The Overbay case could have been resolved very easily, and frankly, nobody would have ever found out about it. But once you file suit against Baltimore City, guess what? Baltimore City is going to defend itself as long as I'm city solicitor. And Mr. President, that goes for whether it's about food trucks or zoning or whatever it is. The Baltimore City Law Department will defend the interests of the city when we are dragged into court by those who want to put us down. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Solicitor and members of the board. Because this is such a hot button topic, and I know I have a young man that reached out to me personally to ask if he could testify. So I would just like Justin to come forward. State your name for the record.
My name is Justin Johnson. And can I begin?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to say, start by saying thank you to President, City Council Member Scott, Mayor Jack Young, the rest of the Board of Estimates for letting me speak here today. Once again, my name is Justin. I'm a student in Baltimore City. I just wanted to give my thoughts around why non-disclosure agreements, or as I'm going to call them throughout the rest of my time, gag orders, why they shouldn't be tolerated in the city. As a black person living in Baltimore City, I've seen for far too long Baltimore City's core leadership, from elected officials to our police officers, get away with harming and bringing intense violence to the people of Baltimore City. Living in Baltimore City, I've seen firsthand people be abused, people be hurt by different city officials, whether it's just through ignoring them, actually bringing real harm upon them, other ways like financial disparity. And worst of all, many people that I know, friends even, that can't even talk about what they're going through because of gag orders like the ones that are being put in place now. In closing, I think that having these gag orders prevents transparency and accountability from being possible in the city. And as an administration that claims to believe in those things, I think these gag orders stand in direct opposition to both of those values. In closing, I would like to say thank you to President Council Scott for taking leadership on this issue, and Mayor Young and the rest of the Board of Estimates for letting me speak. But I do want to encourage you, especially Jack Young and City Solicitor Davis, to practice what you preach. If you truly want to be about transparency and accountability in the city, you would show it by ending these gag orders permanently. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Peterson-Moore. I'm the Deputy City Solicitor for
Hold
the
on,
City
Madam
of
Deputy.
Baltimore.
You can believe. Start. I didn't officially recognize
Oh,
you.
I
so
apologize.
You're fine.
Brandon.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Dana Peterson Moore. I'm the Deputy City Solicitor for the City of Baltimore. We're all talking about speaking our truth, and I want to speak mine very, very briefly. In the spring of 2000, I was stopped by a Baltimore City police officer just after midnight, right in front of my then law office. I was treated very poorly. I was cursed at, called names, told that if I didn't give my driver's license to the officer immediately, I would be pulled through my window and beaten and arrested. What was my offense? I had managed to pass this officer on the left-hand side as I was driving home. I lived downtown at the time. It was very difficult. It still stays with me. I have the utmost respect for the police. I'm the daughter of a 3-star general. I get rank and file. I get military. If I get in trouble, I'm going to call the police. So I understand very deeply, personally, what it means to have a truth that you need to tell, but you can't. I filed a complaint. It went through legal affairs. It was processed. It went nowhere. I later learned that the officer that offended me was going around the city of Baltimore, randomly beating Baltimore City residents. That was very chilling. So when I became city solicitor, or deputy city solicitor.
My.
Oh, gosh.
Soon enough.
Not so fast, young lady, not so fast.
Mr. Mayor, y'all didn't communicate that to the council.
We talk a lot. I felt like I was brought here to do something to make life better for all Baltimoreans, young people in particular. We watched all of the hearing Monday night. It was difficult. It was difficult to hear people's truths and know that they are me and I am them. I've been there. It matters that we let people speak and that we not just let them speak, but that we hear them and do something. Woke up in the morning, the solicitor and I speak a lot, and I said, we've got to do something. It's not enough to say, I want to hear you, I will hear you. We have to hear people. We have to hear you and your friends, everyone. And so the recommendation was, let's use the tools that we already have. Let's open up to the Board of Estimates the lawsuits, the settlements that we have been asked to enter into, and let people come and say whatever their truth is, because we believe this. We act on it. We believe deeply that people should be able to say what happened to them if they want to. For me, I didn't want to. I didn't want to make a cause celeb of me. I was terrified at what happened to me, and I was terrified at whose hands I suffered, and I didn't want to talk about it. I changed my life. I don't pass officers anymore. But I can't make it more real for everybody in this room, everybody watching, for your friends, for the other victims of police brutality. We can't make it more real. When we say you can come and speak your truth, we mean it. Monday night was fascinating. There were a lot of truths told, and there was some disparagement. If you look at the video, if you look at the tape, you'll be able to discern the difference. We don't want disparagement. I've been called a liar. I've been called a liar in this job. I don't like it. I'll deal with it. But I will never deny someone's right to speak out. And that's what he has done. That's what the law department has done. It is real. We mean it. Anybody that wants to come and talk and tell what happened to them.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to address the young man. I used to vote no, yes, sir. I used to vote no on all settlements because it was my protest, because I wanted to hear what happened. So I got criticized for voting no. And I voted no because I believe that anybody can talk about anything that happened to them. So I used to vote no on it all the time as my way of protesting that I want this to be heard. And I still feel that way, that no one should be gagged to say anything. And that's why I told the city solicitor, we have to make sure that there's no more gag orders for people not to be able to speak about what happened to them. But we want them to speak the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I'm going to make a motion, but I have to mention the young man. Justin, thank you very much. I notice you're wearing a block T-shirt. And I just want to mention last year, Mr. President, many will recall the police arrested a large group of people at Artscape on the ramp to Interstate 83 North. And that turned into a very large lawsuit against the Baltimore City Police Department. And the law department worked with the lawyers representing those individuals from Baltimore Block, and we reached a settlement. And when we proposed to include the non-disparagement clause in the settlement agreement, the lawyers for Baltimore Block claimants said, no, we don't want a non-disparagement clause. And you know what the law department said? Fine, fine. So we don't make it a condition of every settlement, and we are happy to have this new procedure in place with your support, Mr. President, to make sure, like my wonderful deputy did just now, people can come in here or take phone calls from the media and speak their truth. So with that, Mr. President, with sincere appreciation for your indulgence this morning and for your indulgence going forward as we bring in claimants to speak their truth, I move to approve the recommended settlement on page 3 of the non-routine agenda.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I would like to explain my vote. I will not stand in the way of anyone seeking to redress for the serious wrongs and alleged in this case, so I vote yes. However, I'll be remiss if I do not express my severe disappointment in our continued use of these clauses. That's what motivated me to move this settlement to the non-routine agenda in the first place for discussion, and why I co-sponsor legislation that will clarify that it is our city's policy not to employ such practices. We have an obligation to own our mistakes and be transparent and accountable to Baltimore's residents at every turn. And we have to also remember that, Mr. Solicitor, you're right, that we have to make sure that these things aren't happening, and we have to defend, but we also have to understand that the wrongdoings have happened through city employees, people that represent the city of Baltimore, people that are supposed to be servants of the city of Baltimore. And we have to make sure that we recognize that fact as well. And we also have to make sure, again, that we make sure that this lasts longer than the 3 members, elected members on this board, that we're in elected office. So thank you. All opposed say nay. The motion carries. The second item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 14 to 18. Space Utilization Committee, Baltimore City Police Department lease agreement and parking agreement. Will the parties please come forward? Senator? No, bring your whole party, everybody, yeah.
Come on, Kobe.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr.
Morning,
Mayor,
Senator.
members of this Board of Estimates. For the record, I'm Senator Antonio Hayes. I represent the 40th District in Baltimore City, mostly comprised of West Baltimore, but I also serve as the Senate Chair of the Baltimore City Senate Delegation. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. This is my first time appearing before the Board of Estimates. Quite a heated morning, but I'm glad to see democracy at work, and you guys are able to work out something what's best for the people of our city. This is my first and hopefully my last time coming here, but I come here on a really important issue. I represent 50% or one of 2 HBCUs here in Baltimore City, that being Coppin State University, as a historically black college and university here in our city. And I want to thank the police commissioner, the mayor's office, and others, and President and Comptroller, who have had conversations with us over a period of time in reference to the police academy and its relocation. And I just want to give you a little bit of background as far as timeline. In 2008, when I was much younger, I'm not saying young, but I'm still young. But when I was younger and a staff member here in the previous administration, the mayor's office, I was instrumental in relocating the current public safety facility from across the street behind City Hall at Guilford up to its current location at Northern Parkway and Park Heights. At that time, when I led that effort and was the project manager on on that, we had committed to, and knowing the folks in that part of the city did not want the police academy there. But we made a commitment that it was best for our police department and our fire department because they had outgrown the space over here on Guilford, and that it would be a temporary fix for about 5 years. Here we are 11 years later, still looking for a more permanent home for that institution. But I would say in 2015, the idea was introduced, and by the way, my protest was on behalf of all of the Baltimore, the 40th District delegation, including delegates Mosby, Wells, and Conway, who could not be here. But then City Councilman Nick Mosby introduced a resolution to the City Council, which was supported by all, to actually look into moving the public safety building to Coppin State University. Many here remember that and supported that effort. It was then that the city's finance department had committed to doing a feasibility study as such, and that was never done. Fast forward to 2019. In my role as chair of the Baltimore City Senate delegation, my primary responsibility is to be a leader and champion for city's priorities. We entered this legislative session in 2019 with the #1 priority from Baltimore City being the relocation of the public safety building, and we were charged to get funding to do so. There's several Baltimore Sun articles that highlight then Mayor Pugh and then Senate President Miller's commitment to making sure this was happening. At some point along the way, in the middle of the session, I began to hear rumors of moving it to University of Baltimore. And a lot of this, Mr. Mayor and the current members here, predates your time, even serving in these positions. But I know we all knew that that was the #1 priority of the city at that time, and we championed that as a city delegation to make sure that happened. And then it brings us to today, where we have switched, we have gone in a different direction, right? And so one of the things that we do in the legislature, there's a joint committee report of both budget committees, the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the House and the Budget and Taxation Committee and the Senate. And as a result of that being the #1 priority, they issued a report. It's called the Joint Committee Report, which is a public document, which the city was to respond to in Coppin State University. Coppin State University explained in this letter that there were negotiations with the Baltimore City and the City Police Department where there was inconsistent leadership and representation at the time, but for whatever reason, the city withdrew themselves from that conversation. And so one of the things, and I'm looking at the tea leaves here, and my political instinct tell me that it's likely that this board will go forward with the recommendation of University of Baltimore. And it's troubling to me, and it's troubling to the community. As you all know, the historically black colleges and universities are currently in a lawsuit with the University of Maryland system because of the duplication of programs at some of our what we call PWIs, predominantly white institutions. And to have the police academy and the city partner with a predominantly white institution, excluding the opportunity for HBCU to have any participation, further exacerbates the city's complicity in that whole, in the purpose of the lawsuit in the beginning. And so if this was to move forward, I would ask this board to consider two things. One, as I read the current agreement, it allows for a feasibility study to be conducted of the current site at Northern Parkway. I would ask that this board include and make a commitment to doing a feasibility study to be located at Coppin and or properties owned by Coppin. I think it was in the early 2000s where the city of Baltimore committed $1 million to demolish the Lutheran Hospital site, which remains vacant. It's several acres of land in the middle of West Baltimore that can serve as a state-of-the-art public safety facility. And the second thing is the city and the police department has indicated that it has a desire to still keep Coppin as a part of this process. And I want to hold you to that idea of keeping Coppin as a part of this process. And this is how you could do it. If Coppin professors were allowed to teach some of the classes, and I've heard the police commissioner talk about this several times, at returning police officers back to the streets and using civilians to replace some of those jobs, if the Coppin was to partner with the police department and provide some of those classes under the higher education standards, those cadets, not continuing enrollment, continuing enrollment does not qualify towards credits for enrollment. But as cadets, if you use Coppin State University professors, it would not only help University of Baltimore with the agreement before you, but it will also help Coppin State University and its enrollment. Both institutions are suffering from low enrollment this year, and so I offer those two things as possible, I guess, for lack of a better word, compromises to moving this forward, to making sure that our historically black college is held up and the city stays to its commitment with the judicial system and making sure your adherence to the consent decree. And with that, Mr. President, members, I end my testimony this morning.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Councilman?
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr.
Councilman,
Mayor.
state your
I'm
name
sorry.
for the record.
Leon Pinkett, Councilman, 7th District. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Madam Controller. Thank you for allowing me to testify this morning. Senator Hayes has really articulated the reason and justification for the reason I stand this morning in protest of the item that's before us. But I think it's worthwhile to reiterate some of the items that he did already testify as it relates to. As was already stated in 2015, Councilman Nick Mosby, who at that time represented the district that I now represent, it did introduce a resolution calling for the relocation of the police academy to Coppin. And within that resolution, it also called for a feasibility study to occur to determine if this was the appropriate relocation for the site. And as was stated, it was accepted overwhelmingly by the council. And not only by the council, it was well received by the general public, actually excited about the opportunity to move the police academy to this location. This current proposal simply looks at UB and doesn't, for a variety of reasons, doesn't have a feasibility study that actually evaluates Coppin for this relocation. I think it's critical that we honor that 2015 resolution and have that feasibility study that really looks at the possibility of the academy moving to Coppin. Secondly, also stated by Senator Hayes, there's already a robust criminal justice program at Coppin. To duplicate this at University of Baltimore not only threatens Coppin, but it also potentially reinforces the reason that the state finds itself in the lawsuit concerning HBCUs. I don't think that we should be doubling down on the justification and reason why we're even facing those types of lawsuits on the state level. And then lastly, I don't think it should be ignored the residual impacts of locating the academy at Coppin. Those impacts relate to quality of life. They relate to potential economic impact. And I'm not talking about impact on private parcels. I'm talking about impact on parcels that are already controlled by the city or Coppin. Senator Hayes mentioned the old Lutheran site. I think it's critical that when we're making decisions about city resources, and an academy is a resource just like any other item or entity that's under our stewardship, when we're making those types of decisions, we need to be critical in our evaluation of where we relocate those assets, and that police academy becomes an asset. So this is not a small decision, and I don't think that anyone has taken this lightly, and we should not take this decision lightly. But I do implore you that we honor that 2015 resolution and consider Coppin for the relocation of the police academy. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilman?
Good morning. Thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to come before you. I want to preface my comments.
Councilman, you have to state your name for the record.
Yitzi Schleifer. I want to preface my comments with this conversation is going back a couple years now with the previous, it started with the previous administration, but it got us here to where we are today. And so this board today is going to be making a decision to spend over $10 million taxpayer dollars between city and state funds without first discussing the plans for the vacant hole this is going to create, as well as a long-term plan for the academy. Senator stated this goes back 11 years ago. It's quite some time. And I certainly do not want to be having any more conversations about this in 11 years from now. I'm hoping that we can come up with a quick resolution on this matter. But I've repeatedly expressed the urgency over the past 2 years for a public meeting to decide what would happen next on this site, being that it sits squarely in the center of my district. And I have a lot of questions on the matter that have yet to be answered. And so, why aren't we investing this $10 million in one of our city-owned properties? Why would we leave the possibility for more blight, and especially in such a high visible intersection in the Northwest? And what message are we sending to all the private equity that we're looking to bring in for the Pimlico racetrack property to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of private money, and they get to the corner and they see that the city has an empty building just sitting there? And so, and to top it all off, as far as locations across the city are concerned, and I understand there's a feasibility study that has already started about the physical location, and there's been conversations about it going back many years. But of all locations, to move it to a location that was going to require the taxpayers to spend $78 per parking spot for every trainee, every instructor, and anybody else who has to work out of this building simply just doesn't make any sense. And my request to the board is that the same level of urgency that's being used to move the trainees out of the academy, which I think we all agree that something needs to change and the academy does need to be improved, is that the same sense of urgency is also used to prevent this corner from being left vacant. And so my request is that the board would request that within the next 60 days that we have that community engagement, as well as having a solution as to what the city is willing to do moving forward on that exact property. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. President?
Good morning, Mr. President and board members. I'm Kobe Little. I'm president of the Baltimore NAACP. We're here this morning to echo the sentiments of Senator Hayes and
Mr. President, pull the mic up some.
We are here to echo the sentiments of Senator Hayes and the other elected officials who've spoken in opposition to a decision to locate the training center at the University of Baltimore today. I'd like to highlight 3 points. The first is, for decades, we've been dealing with questions of separate and unequal when it comes to education in the state of Maryland. The governor and the General Assembly have yet to effectively address the underfunding, the deprioritization, and the duplication of programs that undermine HBCUs in Maryland. In our specific instance, the 2 HBCUs, Morgan and Coppin, that are in Baltimore. This body and this government have the opportunity, with the power invested in this government, to do something to lift Coppin State University. Placing the training center at Coppin State University would direct resources to Coppin, would help to develop West Baltimore, and would be a message to the people of this city that the elected officials of this city recognize and value our HBCUs and aren't just making decisions because they're politically expedient. So one, the NAACP expects the city's leaders not to fall lockstep with the General Assembly and the governor, but to do something to support HBCUs, 1. 2, we expect the city leadership to explore and to weigh and to discuss the impact of development in West Baltimore as opposed to placing this training center in Midtown. Like, what's the bang for our buck? If we build out in West Baltimore versus placing the training center in Midtown. And then finally, as has already been said by the senator and the 2 members of the council, the people of Baltimore deserve transparency. We deserve a full hearing and a full explanation before there is another decision made. We deserve a full hearing and a full explanation about why there is a reversal on the resolution that was sponsored by then Councilman Mosby. And so we're here in opposition, the NAACP is here in opposition today to a decision to locate at the University of Baltimore. And we're not asking anybody to vote against the consent decree. We're asking you to take the time to make a reasoned decision that the citizens of Baltimore have the opportunity to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner?
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Madam Comptroller, members of the board, members of our
Commissioner,
community.
state
My
your
name is
name for the
Michael
record.
Harrison. I am the police commissioner for the Baltimore Police Department.
Thank you.
As you know, the current training facility is functionally obsolete. It is housed in an abandoned middle school that lacks the design, the space, the technology capacity to provide the type of modern instruction that our recruits and our sworn officers need. The current facility capacity limits our ability to increase the academy class size so that we can train more officers to put onto the street. Our goal is to have 6 classes of at least 50 recruits in every single class every year. We cannot meet this goal in our current facility. The Department of General Services has rated the facility as, quote, end of life. The cost of rehabilitating the current site or building a new facility at this site will cost upwards of $50 million and will take several years to complete. We cannot wait to find a permanent solution to this problem, although we need a permanent solution to this problem. The Baltimore Police Department has an immediate need to enhance the level of instruction and facilities for our officers and for our recruits. Training is the foundation of policing and leads to reductions in crime. Thus, high crime is directly related to community trust and officer training. Additionally, we need to move to comply with the terms of this federal consent decree, as already mentioned. Much of the decree focuses on expanded training requirements throughout the department, which necessitates more days of continuing training on more topics than ever before. Judge Bradar, who oversees our consent decree, has expressed his concern that the current facility will inhibit our ability to carry out this vast new training curriculum and comply with this consent decree. For all of these reasons, we must relocate, and we must relocate now. After an extensive evaluation, I've decided that the best option for the immediate term is to move the police academy to the University of Baltimore. UB has the classroom space for us to build the capacity for the Baltimore Police Department to meet its ambitious yet realistic academy class size goals. It also provides additional space for conducting scenario-based training, which is essential for effective adult learning and teaching officers to think critically in stressful situations for our 300 new recruits and over 2,500 sworn officers annually. Lastly, the academy will be situated in the middle of the city near major transportation routes, increasing its public exposure and accessibility. The police academy is the front door to the police department. The annual cost of the UB will be offset, at least in part, by savings from relocating from the Northwest facility, which incur heavy maintenance and utility costs. I'll defer to the Department of Finance and DGS in just a second on those numbers. But let me say, we will not leave that vacant. Fire trains there and will remain there. Our Special Operations Division and SWAT is housed there. They will remain there, so it's not left vacant. It will still be utilized. And so the mayor has committed to a feasibility study and a robust community conversation about the future of Northwest facility. That first meeting is next month. We will continue to plan for the location of a permanent home for the training academy. All options are on the table, and we look forward to reviewing multiple proposals, including one from Coppin, or returning to the Northwest. But today, I urge you for your critical vote for approving our move to the University of Baltimore, which represents an important and exciting step to transforming the department into a modern 21st century world-class police force that you all pay for, deserve, and expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Director?
Yep. Good morning, President Scott, Mayor Young, Comptroller Pratt, honorable members of the board. I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. My comments relate to the fiscal transaction. What's been presented to you this morning is a total cost of $8.4 million. The present 5-year projection for staying at Northern Parkway will be $8.9 million. So over the 5-year term, we would save $500,000 by the relocation. When all units move out of Northern Parkway, we believe it'll be cost neutral. Now, the key to this move is the fact that we will avoid the cost of risk. Presently at Northern Parkway, we're spending $200,000 to $400,000 per year for unanticipated maintenance and repair costs. By relocating, we will no longer have this risk. Thereby, our increased savings moves from $500,000 to approximately $1.5 million to $3 million over the 5-year period. So for those reasons, I request that the Honorable Board approve the 2 agenda items that have been presented, the approval of the lease agreement and the approval of the parking arrangement for the University of Baltimore.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question, Mr. Director. The commissioner just said that the rest of the units were staying, and you just said that they all were going to be vacating the facility.
At some point.
So within that 5 years, so that within the 5 years, everyone's going to be gone, including fire, correct?
Maybe.
Well, I'll defer to the police commissioner.
Well, I don't think he will know what the fire chief is planning to do.
Right.
Maybe.
Can I have a word?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Presently, the fire department and SWAT will stay in that building.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think, Mr. Mayor, what the finance director is saying is that over the 5-year period, he expects everyone to be out of the building, correct?
Well, if not, we'll still achieve $500,000 of savings. And what we're trying to do is avoid the cost of risk, which is the unanticipated maintenance and repair costs, which have been averaging $200,000 to $400,000 per year. So if it's $200,000 a year, that's $1 million of savings over the 5 years. If it's $400,000, it's $2 million.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I want us to do is be clear. We have to be on one accord. We gotta say if they're gonna move out, we have to say they're gonna move out, and we have to be honest and open. That's how we ended up with all these people here today, because we weren't honest and open. Previous people weren't honest and open with the public about, and even elected officials about what's happened here. So if we know that they're all going to be gone in 5 years, listen, you and I have had this discussion. I think it's ridiculous that we have the fire training in 2 separate locations on both sides of town, but we have to be open and transparent with the constituents in the city about that. Madam Director.
Good morning, Board. Chichi Nyaga Nash, Director of General Services. I do not have any prepared comments. I just wanted to make myself available in case there were any questions regarding the collaboration between General Services and the Police Department in preparation for an eventual move.
Yes, ma'am. Before I go to the comptroller, asked to go first, Mr. Mayor. Madam Comptroller.
Yes. Baltimore City residents are entitled to lawful policing that protects their rights. The appropriate training of police officers is critical to an effective crime-fighting strategy that focuses both on reducing crime and protecting the legal rights of our citizens. Through revamping the police academy, which includes the lease with the University of Baltimore, we are able to meet the mandate of the consent decree for training of cadets, police officers, command, and administrative staff of the police department. The protest submitted by Senator Antonio Hayes, delegates Nick Mosby, Melissa Wells, Frank Conaway, and City Councilman Leon Pinkett included a letter from Coppin University which detailed its discussions with the city and the police department and a proposal to host the police academy training at Coppin University. The Coppin State University proposal included the opportunity for the police academy trainees to receive 18 college credit hours with the option to pursue a degree in criminal justice. I saw the president of the University of Baltimore yesterday, and he is in support of Coppin professors teaching the police academy at the University of Baltimore. Therefore, it is my recommendation that the approval of the lease with the University of Baltimore be conditioned upon the inclusion of Coppin professors in the training at the police academy. Coppin's inclusion in the solution to improve policing and crime reduction in Baltimore would be an added benefit to our residents and meeting the requirements of the consent decree. In addition, a letter dated from the mayor, dated July 23, 2019, states that a study be commissioned and includes significant input from the affected residents, elected officials, and other stakeholders. I am in agreement with Councilman Slicer that a follow-up report of the status and a timeline of what the administration plans are for the facility be reported to this board within 60 days.
Thank you. And Madam Comptroller, to the end also, I just want to say that we all know that the federal judge overseeing the consent decree has basically mandated that we need a training facility. At the same time, I couldn't be more disappointed that commitments that were made to the citizens and elected officials were not met. We were promised engagement that never happened. They were promised meetings that never happened. And we know what the Academy has meant to that community. And we also know the discussions that were had with the senator, the now delegate, and the new councilman about Coppin State University. We have to understand that Northwest and West Baltimore are just as important as Central Baltimore. And we have to make sure that that continues to move forward, and we have to put that in everything that we do. So I'm actually going to abstain on this vote when we have it, because I believe that we have to do a better job of keeping our word, and if we were not for basically a mandate of the consent decree, I would vote no. Simply not because I'm against these things or against what we're doing, but because we have to be open and transparent at every turn. We understand that things change, that administrations change, that no one up here made those decisions. They were made before this mayor took office, but we have to be open and transparent at every cost. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to respond to Councilman Schleifer. I think you got a letter that says there's going to be a community listening tour on October the 30th from 7 to 9 p.m. to be held at the Jewish Community Center of Greater Baltimore at 5700 Park Heights Avenue. So we do have a listening tour scheduled for your community up there. So you said we didn't have it.
Can I respond to that, Mr. President?
Can you change the date? You said that does that.
The comptroller just explained it to the mayor, Mr. Councilman. Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, with your permission, if we can have Commissioner Harrison approach the mic for just a couple of questions.
Actually, and also, we just want to, for the record, say that we are going to also call the third item on the non-routine agenda, which is the Baltimore Development Corp. No, yeah, we called both of them already. Sorry, we're good to go. Thank you.
Mr. Harrison, would you approach, please?
Mr. Commissioner?
Thank you for indulging me one more time. I am absolutely in favor of allowing professors from Coppin to be adjunct instructors at our police academy. But before we all agree to that, there are specifications, as you very well know, with consent decree requirements and Maryland state training requirements that require sworn members of the department to teach the majority of the courses. When appropriate, an adjunct instructor could come in, but we have to remember to do that in a way that if that instructor is, because that's why we want to have permanent instructors, so that when an instructor is absent, the course is still taught. And in the interest of having adjunct instructors who are not members of our department, and we can't control whether or not they're going to be there because of other obligations, as long as we make sure that when they make that agreement, it's really a binding agreement that they will be there to teach, so that instructions will go on, even if they are absent. Somebody in their absence who has the skill set to teach that course actually teaches the course, so that we're not stuck becoming non-compliant because an outside instructor could not show or did not show for some reason.
Commissioner Harrison, just a couple of questions. It was before you were appointed, of course, but do you know, in fact, that Judge Brodar, the federal judge presiding over the consent decree implementation process, actually visited the existing training facility on Northern Parkway?
He did.
And he spent some 4 hours or so touring the facility, meeting with the staff, meeting with officers, meeting with internal affairs officers and others to discuss the training that goes on there, correct?
He did, yes, sir.
And you mentioned in your earlier comments that the judge has brought a certain urgency to the need for the Baltimore City Police Training Facility to be relocated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's something of an understatement, isn't it?
That is an understatement.
He has made it very clear that he does not believe that success.
Ms. Kim, please, Ms. Trueheart.
He has made it very clear, isn't it true, that he does not believe that we will make any kind of progress unless and until we stand up an adequate training facility.
Ms. Trueheart.
That was the sentiment of the judge. In my very first weeks here, that was his sentiment.
And in fact, just yesterday, the judge issued an order approving the second-year monitor's plan, and there are 4 pages in that plan, you mentioned it earlier, that is all devoted to training. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, this training is focused on stops, arrests, detention, sexual assault, all the things that are so critically important to the improvement of Baltimore City Police. Isn't that true?
That is true.
And you expect to be able to move into this new facility once this board approves it within 6 months, correct?
Sooner than that, yes, sir.
Sooner than that. Thank you very much, Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if the board is prepared for a motion?
Yes, Senator.
I'm sorry, I'm new to this again. So there was 2 recommendations, one that we used the professors and one, is that a motion made?
I'm about to make it, Senator.
That's happening. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm prepared to make a motion that the recommendation be approved with the following conditions. Number 1, that consistent, as explained by the Commissioner, with Maryland law regarding certification of law enforcement training facilities and the commitment of Coppin State Administration, that every effort be made to include as adjunct professors suitably qualified in the new training facility, whether it's at the University of Baltimore, at Coppin, or anywhere else, that Coppin University professors be included in the cohort of faculty who will train our police officers, both new officers as well as existing officers in service training. Again, consistent with the consent decree and Maryland state law. Number 2, Mr. President, the motion is conditioned on the continued feasibility approach to the existing facility at Northern Parkway and Park Heights Avenue, consistent with the councilman's recommendations and the comptroller's recommendations, and that this board expect within 60 days a further report on the efforts to identify the best and highest use for that facility, regardless of what happens with the fire department or any other present use of that building. And then finally, Mr. President, my motion is conditioned on within a reasonable period of time and not after any renewal of the University of Baltimore lease is undertaken, that a comprehensive report be submitted to this board outlining what additional efforts can and should be made and what achievements can be made working with the Coppin University administration to locate a police training facility at Coppin or in a city-owned building in the Coppin neighborhood, and what steps will be necessary to make that happen in consultation with the police commissioner, the city real estate office, Department of General Services, and our elected officials whose presentations here today the board deeply appreciates. That is my motion, Mr. President.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
President abstains, the motion carries. The third item on the, we're going to pause for 1 second, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I make this little comment.
Yes,
I just want to assure everybody that I agree to the staffing from Coppin to be at the University of Baltimore and the commitment to do a feasibility study of city-owned property as well as Coppin. That's my commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. The third item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 41 to 44 of Baltimore Development Corporation Development and Funding Agreement. We received one letter of protest. Will the parties please come forward? Ms. Trueheart?
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Trueheart.
I'll be very pleased when the composition of this board changes to just our elected officials, and that certain individuals leave, because I absolutely don't think they represent the citizenry of this city. I'm here because historically the Baltimore Development Corporation has not represented the interest of the African American community very well. This particular item on the board is about redesigning the jewel of Baltimore in terms of our inner harbor properties. And yet, the verbiage included in this item talks of community engagement for input around what that design should be and how it was focused on connecting Rashfield to the surrounding neighborhood. I find that offensive because the inner harbor is an asset for all of Baltimore, all its residents. And if the redesign of Rashfield is only to serve those folks who live around it, they don't generally look like me. They don't generally include the young people of our city who have been known to frequent that area downtown and often don't feel welcome. So my question and reason for protest is, did the Baltimore Development Corporation, along with the Waterfront Partnership, reach out to young folks who look like me, who use that facility, and ask them what features they'd like to see in the redesign of Rashfield? And if they can't tell us, because they said they reached out to community, I want some data. I want to know, what communities did they reach out to? What was the composition of the people that they communicated with? And if it is not diverse, you, Mr. President, have been talking about equity in city business. I'd like to make sure that this process reflected equitably across the city in terms of our interest. It offends me every Wednesday, right, to look at the things that get spent here without great leadership and scrutiny and inclusivity. And it's amazing. The last protest item on this agenda about the police department, stop throwing money at them. Our babies need help. Make the inner harbor welcoming for our children. Fix our schools. You putting $500 million a year in the police department, and then today you're gonna throw another $8 million at them? Come on, son.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. And then we're gonna hear from them. Hear from them when you finish, and then when we have some follow-up for you about the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Dan Taylor, the Managing Director of Business and Neighborhood Development at Baltimore Development Corporation, joined by Lori Schwartz, the Waterfront Partnership. Just to give a brief idea of where we are on this project, the agreement before the board today will allow this project to move forward into construction, hopefully in early 2020. That is a long road. It's been a long road to get there. If I were Ms. Trueheart looking at an agreement today, I'd say no one's spoken to me this year or last year or the year before. we started this process dating back to 2013 and 2014 with a master plan for the Inner Harbor. And before any component of Rashfield was designed, we asked at BDC and at Waterfront Partnership and other people on an advisory board, the composition of which Lori can speak to, what do we even want in this park? What does the city want? What do the people of the city want? And how do we make this specifically a park for everyone that everyone can use as a recreational amenity? And so there was an extensive public engagement process that was undertaken starting in 2016 that really took the bulk of the year of 2016 before design on the park even started. And I'd ask Lori to speak to that specific process since they were the lead on this and will continue to be the lead on this project moving forward.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lori Schwartz, President of Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore. Thank you for having me here today. The Rashfield engagement process was very broad and lengthy. We had over 1,000 participants speak to the plan and what the plan should include, and that engagement process included a number, at least 3 broad public meetings that were publicized through the city and through Waterfront Partnership. We had over 200 attendees. It was held at the Science Center in the evening, so people could attend. There were many ideas that came through that were added to the plan. Skate Park was a good example that both Skate Park of Baltimore supported as well as youth that we spoke with. The steering committee that we put together to help guide the process included members of the Inner Harbor youth participants of the Inner Harbor Project, which we work closely with, and a student from the Digital Harbor High School, as well as Parks and People, Baltimore City Rec and Parks, BDC, Waterfront Partnership, and others. We, in addition to those surveys, public meetings, we wanted to go even further, so we hired a market research firm to make random phone calls. They're professional. I can give you their criteria or their bio and so on. They surveyed over 300 individuals throughout Baltimore City. The makeup of those that were surveyed was 62% African American. I think it's 62%. 62% African American, 32% white, ages 18 and above. And through that survey, we learned people wanted shade. We added over 400 trees to the park, a large shade structure, free activities for children. And this first phase, which is what's moving ahead now, includes predominantly children-based activities, a large nature park and a kinetic play park, as well as a skate park, and then an outdoor cafe, which the park will also include. I'm happy to go through any level of detail, but we have the second phase to design yet, and we can go even further and talk about that process when we get into that. But this is the first phase, and we believe we've had a broad, inclusive process.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz, actually, when I was briefed on this, I remember I mentioned to you that I attended a silent party at Rashfield with a bunch of teenagers. Actually, Ms. Trueheart was the organizer of that party. So I'm going to ask if you and the partnership could brief her on the project, and also because we believe, I know the mayor supported that event as well, that we want to have more events like that for the young people, teenagers specifically, at Rashfield, to let them know that this is their Inner Harbor too, and that they are welcome. And I've seen the design and know that this would lead to more of that. But I think that it would go a long way if you could reach out to set that up for Ms. Trueheart.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the protest be rejected and that the recommended approval be granted.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries. As there is no more business before the board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to call to order the Board of Estimates noon bid opening for September the 18th, 2019. No addenda have been received. The first item is DPW SC 998, on-call assessment and repairs of sanitary sewer mains and lateral various locations with a bid bond. The first bidder is Metra Industries with a bid bond. Total bid amount $11,497,240. $11,497,240. The next bidder is IPR Northeast LLC with a bid bond. Total dollar amount $6,978,650. $6,978,650. The next bidder is Anchor Construction Corporation. With a bid bond. Total dollar amount $7,041,000. $7,041,000. The next bidder is Spinello Companies with a bid bond. Total dollar amount $6,893,300. $6,893,300.
All of these will be referred to the Department of Public Works for their review.
The next item is the Bureau of Procurement, B50005773, pavement marking services for Baltimore. No bid bond is required. The company is Traffic Lines, Inc. Total dollar amount $323,500. $323,500. The company name is Corporate Maintenance Group. Corporate Maintenance Group, LLC. Total dollar amount $421,500. $421,500.
These will both go to the Bureau of Purchasing for review. Thanks.
The next item is Bureau of Procurement, B50005788. No bid bond required. The company is JF Fisher, Inc. Total dollar amount $1,316,575.50. $1,316,575.50. The next bidder is Denver Elec Incorporated. Elec Incorporated. Total dollar amount, $1,288,500. $1,288,500.
This will go to purchasing for review.
The next item is the Bureau of Procurement B50005794, City Works Asset Management System, AMS Project Management Office, technical opening with a bid bond. The bidder is KCI Technologies, Inc.
Not reading price, are we? We're not reading price, are we?
No.
Okay,
But we're just
just for technical, okay. Well, yeah, I would expect that that would be the case, that you don't want to open up.
Bid bond would be with the price, right? The bid bond would be with the price. This is just the technical.
Okay.
This is the technical for KCI Technologies, Inc. The price will not be open.
The price number low. They have to score high enough for the technical and ask the board permission to open the price.
Okay, just to conclude that one, this will go to purchasing for review. Yeah.
The next item is Bureau of Procurement B50005860, OEM Parts and Service for Marine Skimmers and Fireboats, no bid bond required. The company is Markarn Engineering. Total dollar amount, $2,675,000. $2,675,000.
Is that with the bid bond?
No bid bond.
Wait,
No bid bond required.
okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, all right, this will go to purchasing for review. 577. I don't know what that goes to. Oh, this goes to the second one that came up on the agenda. And here's, thank you, Glenn.
The next item is from the Bureau of Procurement, B50005861, tire service truck with a bid bond required. The bidder is Pacifico Ford, Inc. with a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $116,980. $116,980. The next bidder is Bay Shore Ford with a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $112,802. $112,802.
With a bid bond.
Yes, with a bid bond.
Thank you.
The next bidder is Beltway International LLC. With a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $121,057. $121,057.
Okay, these will go to purchasing for review.
The next item is Bureau of Procurement B50005870 Wash Bay Platform Life, no bid bond required. The name of the company is Allen, hold on, can you read it? Allen Ty and Associates LLC. Total dollar amount, $128,758. $128,758.
This will go to purchasing for review. Thanks. Oops.
And the last item is Bureau of Procurement B50005895 Crew Cab Pickup with a bid bond. The company name is Hertrick Fleet Services, Inc.
With a bid bond.
With a bid bond. Total dollar amount is $78,280. $78,280. Next bidder, Pacifico Ford. With a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $81,299. $81,299. The bidder is Bay Shore Ford with a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $75,793. $75,793. bidder is Beltway International LLC with a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $91,757. That's $91,757.
This will go to purchasing for review.
There being no more business before this board, it is being adjourned.